Good morning.
Good morning. Well, you know, I'm very nervous. I've done lots and lots of talks.
Oh, don't be.
And this is probably the first time I feel rather nervous to talk to my field. So, I'd quite like to start with a This is going to be about the third or fourth time I've done this talk. I don't memorize it. Usually it pops out somewhere. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to say. This is about the myth of disease. You may wonder why I use the word myth. In fact, I might be lisp saying something. A myth, in most of our dictionaries, means that it is a fairy story. It's something from the past, it's something that's not true. But in reality, a myth is your spiritual journey or odyssey. In fact, we all have a common odyssey, we're in Surit. It means that we're doing our best to find out about the life forces, the action of the lower life forces, or our servants, and the action of both the Roch Buddhas and the Roch Lafi. Lapa would say the higher life forces being the power of Almighty God and the Holy Spirit. My job over the years has been to help me, and therefore the people that I see, to differentiate between the forces that act in their lives. Of course, we have the privilege of being civil to do this. But most people don't. Most people are out there having no understanding of why they get sick. In fact, many people don't even know that they're on an odyssey, a journey. So my job, in a way, is to help people to see that their lives are actually noble, that they're inspired, that every little hiccup, every little thing that they encounter may be reframed as an odyssey, as a journey. The problem with most of us is that we still are paddling in the Aegean Sea, or dunning out the stables like Hercules. In other words, we get stuck in our myths, in our spiritual journeys. And so, what I try to do is to enable people to see what they carry inside themselves that keeps them held in the same myth over and over again. In a way, it's like a computer. That the computer, well, for example, I have a Macintosh. I think it's very easy. I think it's a human operating system. And I've been trying to program it so it will be read by the common masses, which is a DOS system for Windows. And it's incredibly difficult to get my operating system to talk to this common operating system. Most of us actually operate from a common operating system. That means your material nature, your force, that comes from your ancestry, from your parents. We know this very easily. We talk about it. We perhaps reminiscent about material forces. We may think we know about material forces. Most of us, in a way, have a vague understanding of the heaviness and the inertia and the inability for us to move out of those dynamics when we're held in them. When Alicia, my wife, went off to India in November last year, I woke up with backache. I rarely get backache. I hardly moved. I was really struggling. She had gone off. I was with the kids. I was daddy. And there I was, hanging over my children's bed. I couldn't move. I was absolutely rigid. Any motion just was really painful. And as I was talking to my youngest, I internally asked, why am I feeling like this? What's the problem? And I realized that I was in my father's state, his journey, his odyssey, which is to feel unsupported. He was my support going off to India. I was then supporting the family, a role that I'm not so good at, actually. And I realized that I had fallen into my father's pattern that said that there's no one to support me, there's no woman to support me, there's nothing inside me to support me, I have no spiritual relationship to support me, And that lack of support at that moment manifested in me actually unable to hold myself upright because my back at that moment crumbled. Because I had, at that moment, touched something that I was carrying, which was my familial pattern of not being supported. And as I realized that I was in that state, that sort of myth that, in fact, I was falling into, I realized that I had to surrender it. After 30 years, you sometimes realize what you have to do. And so as I walked up the stairs, I surrendered, and I literally felt this force leave me, my backache completely left, completely, within 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. So, in a way, I introduced this model that I'm going to introduce to you with that type of story, the idea that you and I can live our lives totally attentive all the time of what is actually operating in us at any one moment, which is actually what Papa really asked us to do, to be really attentive of the forces that are either our servants or they're parts of us that have become more autonomous, become our boss, become a bully, and that most of the time we don't recognize that, and therefore they have to, in a way, illustrate their relationship, their out of sync relationship, by us becoming ill, dysfunctional, disorganized, segmented. So what you have here is a very extraordinary body. A body that you've got in this life to act like a video screen, to tell you, Salahin, you've got backache. Why? Salahin, you just jumped off the car, landed on a molehill, opened up trod onto my ankle and went over on my ankle. Why have I done that? Is it just because that's fate, I didn't see where I was looking and I jumped and fell onto this molehill? Or is it that somehow my inner will jump me onto that molehill, allow me to open up my medial, lateral ligaments, for me to complain bitterly all the way up to a subit event, and to realize as I go that the reason why I completely buggered my ankle was because there's a part of me saying, Salahin, the myth that you're trapping on is you don't actually feel supported by subit members. And therefore, each time you come to a subit group or subit situation, very often you sabotage your relationship by saying, I don't think I'll go, dear, because I'm rather sore today. And so in a way, what this jump had done for me was to make me see that actually I, in a way, amplify my feeling of being unsupported. And I do it in coming to subit events and exerting controversy, and therefore having the 1 or 2 people going, this chap, this arrogant Brit, or this sod who's telling us what to do, or he's mixing. And then actually what's really happening is that there's a part of me that says, how do I get them to make me feel isolated, separated, and different from them? I know, I'll make them pissed with me. So actually, my history of isolation and separation has been my journey, and that's what I'm going to help you to see. Yes, it's my personal journey. Actually, it's all our personal journey, because our journey is to be united with God, is to be united with ourselves, with our inners, and who we are, and our ancestry. And that is unity. But the opposite pole is separation. So I'm going to talk to you about the different models that you and I inherit as human beings. Actually, as material human beings. In our DNA, in our coding, we look at ourselves as the product of our mummy and daddy. And for all of those of you who are computer whiz kids, 256 ancestors, which make up 7 generations, that actually make up the DNA of the house or body that you and I exist in. So your house, your structure, is made up of the material from your parents and your ancestors. And in this basement, so there's the basement and there's the ground out of which you've come, here's the base, you contain the seed memory, the resources, the qualities, the tools, all the wonderful things that have made you unique human beings. But also you have all the shadows and oh dears and skeletons in the cupboard that also reside here that, God willing, the latter hand brings up alive for us to see and either surrender to God or deal with it and chuck it out ourselves. And downstairs in the basement, you could liken this basement as if in some places there is a strong, good, loamy earth, and in other parts of this basement there are metaphorical areas that are like quicksand and sandy soil and rocky soil, just like those parables in the Christian Bible. And in this soil out of which you come, you contain what we call miasms. Now, miasms are a Greek word, it comes from the Greek word, which means fog. The way to really taste this is the idea of, you've got the three witches. It's interesting, there's all these witches, and they're stirring the pot. And there's this sort of rather sort of yellowy, nasty, oily fog around the area. And they sort of bent over and hunched. And they really represent the sort of the dark side, the manipulative side of us. And there they are, mixing away the potion. But really what we've got here is a fog. And miasm comes from the Greek that says, really yellowy, oily fog. And we contain this fog. And this fog permeates the entire building. So every part of you is permeated with this. So the way that you see, the way that you hear, the way that you taste or talk is permeated by the collective unconscious of the pathologies that we humans have inherited and indeed in this life manufacture. And of course this is what we'd like to be able to surrender to the Almighty in our latter hand, but unless you know what you're surrendering, it'll come back. God doesn't want us to be unconscious, He wants us to be conscious so that we don't make the same mistakes each time, because otherwise we can't pass on to our children qualities of excellence. Because if we don't know why we got rid of something, we don't know what it was, in fact our children will still have it because it's in their DNA, because most of the time we've conceived our children with the fog of conception. In other words, the miasms were there when we conceived them. So we may be releasing it in our latter hand. Unless you know what it is, the children will still nevertheless carry the nuance of these foggy bits. Let's talk about the fogs. The first one is a very important one. It's called Sora. And it's Hebrew for leper, alone, separate, different, rebellious. Almost all of us Sumid members are this. Sora. It's characterized by I am unclean. The word, as I said, means leper. What they used to do in the old biblical times was to, and indeed, in fact, in Africa, even today, they used to put the lepers at the end of the village. Separate, isolated, different. So Sora, out of which comes psoriasis, out of which comes itch, out of which comes allergies. How many of you got allergies? How many of you get eczema? How many of you are asthmatic? This is Sora. How many of you are Jewish? The psychic nature of the Jewish is this. You carry, I'm isolated. You carry, I'm different. You carry, I'm the chosen race. Which means that we are isolated from their Creator because we're not Jewish. And here, we in Subud do the same. We carry an isolationist policy of saying we are the best, we have the left hand that will clean us. So we separate ourselves from the other parts of the world and other people, unless they come and join the club. Yes. So we create a sora, an itch, an irritation. You're dirty, you're unclean, you must come and clean yourself with the right hand. Surely God is bigger than that. And so the sora says, I am different. I am alone. I am a rebel. Well, you can see, I am one of these. At 38 years of age, I developed soric plaque on my back. It was a horrible moment in my life. When, after 38 years, I realized that my body started to wave at me and say, Solomon, take notice, you are soric. You are one of the great unwashed. That was true when I was 18. You are one of these people who poison yourself. Glug, glug, glug. Alcohol, glug, glug. No, good dope, thank you very much. Smoking. I did all of that stuff. I could pour everything into every part of my body to make sure I was dirty, unclean, itch, scratch. That's what allergy means. I am irritable with something in me. It's not some pollen. It's not some food. How stupid of us to think that food which God gives us, that we are actually irritable with that. How stupid to think that we are irritable with pollen, which is the seed of life. How stupid of us humans who have no understanding and who buy other models of reality when we know that there are the life forces, the force of things. What does a seed mean when it pops through the air, you stiff it up your nose, whack it into your conjunctive, I can't even say that anyway, your eyes, and you start to get irritable. Or you eat a pineapple, or you have some wheat. Why is it that you are irritable with the food of life, the staff of life, the seed of life? Do you think it's really something that pops out of the atmosphere? No. But nevertheless, it's the force, the animal component of things that take power. And things that take power is the animal mechanism. When Baba talks about the animal, he talks about things that take power. So when we're soric, and we start to become allergic, you need to say, aha, I wonder what this might be telling me. Not, let's go to the doctor and get some antihistamines so that I wipe out the VDU, the video, what's it called? Display. Sora is I am separate. Allergies mean I am also irritable. That becomes my identity. Most people who get sick have an identity that says, I am asthmatic. I am in cancer remission. I am allergic, asthmatic, all these things. They're coded into your identity. So Sora is the primary irritation you and I, and all of mankind, has, because this comes from the separation of man and beast. Man and beast, i.e., when human beings bedded down with the animals in the byre, in the cowshed, in the behind the thing in the fields, and the bugs jumped onto them and they scratched. And so they separated. The beasts were out there in the field and human beings separated themselves. But in reality, it's the separation from self, separation from God, separation from your inner, separation from your ancestry. That's what Sora means. So when you start to get, and you hear people saying, I'm allergic, do some testing nowadays to find out why, what force is it that has entered them in whether it's nutritionally, i.e. an archetypal form of nutrition that they're not getting nourished by. Being nourished by electronic stuff. So this is the first key, Sora. I'm separate, I'm chosen, I'm also alone. Now the jewel of this is, of course, the jewel being, this is the seed of irritation. It's like, what you think of these is like an oyster. And an oyster forms a pearl through irritation. In a way, it's this idea of diamond in the rough. The idea that we human beings are being polished, whether by the latter hand or by marriage or by intercourse with and interconnection with other people. We're being polished as human beings so that we become, indeed, noble human beings. And one of the journeys that we have is to notice the deep down irritations inside us that's in that seed, or is the seed, that in fact will one day become the pearl. So all of these miasms that I'm going to quickly go through, you need to see the pearl of this. And the pearl of Sora, of course, would be I am. What would it be if the opposite is I'm separate, I'm alone? I'm connected, I'm united, I'm whole, I'm clean, I'm innocent, and we are all the chosen people. Okay? So out of this morass, out of this basement of your house, comes a number of other miasms. Now let me just see what I'm going to do. I'll do the English one. So the English, us English, apart from sort of talking, sort of rather sort of up our throats, and then sort of stuffing a bit and having big chests, noses in the air. We have a jolly good strategy, actually. It's called tubercular. Yes, tubercular. And the tubercular miasm, tubercular, this is when my spelling, tuberculosis is actually the pathology. Now, 70% of Europe in the 17th century had tuberculosis. Huge numbers of people died, but of course, a few people survived and their progeny went on, carrying the seed of tuberculosis. Now, tuberculosis is an interesting disease because what actually happens is an airborne thing, comes in, and what we do is we encapsulate it. We cover it. We enclose it. Very successful strategy to make sure you don't get tuberculosis. So you wall it in. So us British, because we're on an island, we have these castles. It's called the Englishman's house is his castle. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
And these castles, you can't come in, really, unless we, like you. And if we like you, then we'll drop the drawbridge. And then you can come in. Only on condition that you put down your arms. You can see the pomposity of it all. But nevertheless, we can't. Send for guards, damn it! So the dynamic of all of this is that the tubercular constitution at a human level is I love you if, and I love you but. Now, what it really means is that you have encapsulated yourself in this castle around your heart with a portcullis. And if you're of royal blood, of course, then a few of us really get moats as well, so we make sure no one can come in. And basically, we have control over the drawbridge. What it really means is this: that when you and I have a conditional dynamic inside us, which we say, yes, my sweet, of course I love you, as long as you brush my shoes, iron my shirts, make love to me at least 6 times a night. And really sort of appease my closed heart so that actually my heart will open. So it's conditional, if it's but. And this is very important because when we are in this but phase, what we do is we close and hold our heart and we encapsulate it with, what do you think we encapsulate it with? With a tight pericardium, which then changes the hemodynamics, which means the blood flow of the arterial flow through the heart, which then changes the plaque mechanism, which changes and creates atherosclerosis. We create heart disease. This is heart disease. This is encapsulation. This is kidney stones. This is gallbladder stones. This is fibroids. Fibroids is a really good example of I love you if I love you but. You have something in your uterus that's filled with something. Nothing else would come in. So you encapsulate it. Make sure that nothing can enter because you've got something growing in it. So diseases are an illustration of our state, our myth, our journey that actually most of the time we don't even know that we're on a journey because we're so blind because we're just doing subit. We're doing the Latin hand, but we're not paying attention to what Baba said. Notice the force of everything that's going on. If your servants are supporting you, they will tell you when you're holding something, when you're about to fight, when you're about to tell a lie. Your nose will get bigger when you're just about to say something inappropriate. If you're acting from your balls, us chaps, us men, in other words, a patriarchal mechanism, a male-dominated, our penises will tell us that we're in that space. Because it comes alive. It says, Zahir, you're acting from down here, not from your inner. That's what the latter hand is for. Bringing alive your... What's extraordinary is I teach this work out, and Alicia, we teach it out in the world, and people get it. They live it. They're not doing the latter hand, but they know how to surrender. They know how to ask for grace, and they know how to start to listen to their bodies because we help them to enable them to do that. And they start to recognize when they're in this tubercular constitution. They start to notice when they're actually tight-arsed and holding their hearts like this. And so at that moment you can say, please God, may I surrender this? Please God, may I be bigger than this? Please God, may I widen and open the drawbridge and not place this condition here. So if you want heart disease, carry on. If us British, we know how to do this. Very high levels of heart disease in Britain. Oh, it's meat. Cholesterol. Oh, come on. We'll blame anything but us. Cows, sheep, because they can't talk back. See? So, coming out of this, I married, Lisa, we've been married almost 25 years. It's been sort of 27 years almost. But actually today, oh yes, it's my birthday today. So I got married in 20...
Tomorrow, actually.
Oh. And that's the quality of a woman. well rehearsed. Yeah. So I married Alicia, and I was absolutely tubercular. And dear Alicia, little did I know at the time, was syphilitic. Well, the scabs dropped off and it was okay, but now you'll notice that one of the ways to deliver a story is to become the fool. Actually, the jester. One of the reasons that we all have to develop the jester is because the jester in us is able to tell the royal person, i.e. the noble part of you, when you're off track, when something's going wrong. When one of your servants are doing inappropriate things, the jester in me will say, Solihin, you're off track. And I won't cut his head off. And one of the reasons to be the fool is to lighten the burden of stories like this. That's the fool. You need to develop the fool and the jester. All these qualities that enable us, in us, they're all our allies. This is what Baba talked about in the life forces. These are the forces that you contain, that help you to live a wide, noble life. So I'll try to find the fool every so often. So syphilitic. Syphilitic was a very interesting one. When we started to get married, when we were married, we used to go out. We used to have great time together, and there was a time when Alicia would go out to dinner, and she would have a tummy upset. And it was just awful. So we'd go, and then we'd leave, because her tongue used to give her absolute problems, real digestive problems. I was very ignorant in those days, didn't really know what was going on. I did my best to help her. Now what we've understood is that Alicia at that time was in a pattern at the human level is, I want to change, but I cannot. Now, the syphilitic pattern is centered around our digestive system at a physiological level, and at a feeling level, it's centered around erroneous feelings. Chakras, actually, all this New Age stuff, the chakra business. Chakras hold feelings. They're a processor in us, our physiology, that allows us autonomically that when we take on erroneous feelings, or that we conjure up erroneous feelings, or we create erroneous feelings, because we may be coded to do so, that our autonomic nervous system, our chakra system, this thing that we've blindly borrowed from the Hindu philosophy, which is 7,000 years of age. You know, you've got the latter hand, which there should be new stuff coming out of Subud, not old stuff. All people getting into chakras, this is old stuff, it's old history. You've got the latter hand that will create and allow you to be guided to see who and what you are. And the chakras just are our housekeepers. The British are very good housekeepers. We have the little gem who comes in every Tuesday and cleans house. But actually, you have a cleaner inside you. It's the chakra system. Actually, it's your physiological centers that are called the sacral chakra, coccygeal chakra. Doesn't sound so interesting when you say that. Actually, it's not called that, sorry. It's called coccygeal plexus, sacral plexus, solar plexus, cardiac plexus, cervical plexus. It's not very exotic, is it? Much better to call it chakras. But actually, these systems are designed to clean house, to take out, to allow all those erroneous feelings that are not inner feelings to be brushed away, to be cleaned autonomically. Actually, you don't have to really do latter hand to do it, because you have a servant that knows how to do it. You poo most of the time, usually what, once a day? Well, if you don't, then you ought to ask your servant to begin to do house cleaning daily. It's called a daily in English. We have our daily coming in, and she cleans everything. Why? Because we go to the loo daily. So if you're constipated, then ask your servant, your vegetable system, your vegetative mechanism, your vegetable nature, why is it holding on to feelings or emotions that you don't need in your house, which then make you feel unable to change because you're in the vegetative? Have you seen trees moving? Yes, but do they move from A to B? No. The vegetable system can't move. So when you're stagnant in your life, when you're unable to move, when your lymphatic system doesn't work, when you're getting flu and colds and your immune system's... How many of you get colds and coughs and sputters and things all the time? How many of you are ill a lot of the time? That's the vegetative system. I want to change, but I cannot. That's the human dynamic. This part, this human silly thing up here, that actually really corrupts the operating system. So what you need and I need to do is to recognize that the pearl of this is I can change. And so people who have digestive problems, people who are unable to go to the loo properly, whose menstrual cycle doesn't work, who pee a lot or not so lot, who don't sweat properly or sweat too much. Right? So people whose, if you like, vegetative system doesn't work, and it's usually seen as the digestive system, then you know the signal is vegetable, vegetative nature, vegetative force, feeling, emotion, erroneous stuff and you're not doing your housework, then you can order your body, your servant, your life force to begin to do the cleaning. It's that simple. So someone's stuff comes in, goes out. You don't have to hold it. But most of us hold on to people's feelings. Our feelings, their feelings, everyone's feelings. And we go around full of other people's stuff and we get nourished by that. That's not good quality food. So that's why often people get allergic. Here's a story. A chap came to see me the other day in Switzerland. We've done a lot of my work. He's a physician, actually a psychologist. Has this prodigious brain. Brain goes everywhere. Huge, huge intellect. Pretty nutty because he works with nutty people. I mean, he's really on the edge. I mean, you have to be. And he said, my 7-year-old daughter has been, 9-year-old daughter has been allergic for the last 2 years. And done all these tests, can't find out why it is. Eosinophil count is very high, but we think it's dust. So I began to work with her in front of the class. I was doing an allergy workshop. And what came up was, yes, this was dust. So what we did was we got a pillow and we pushed it into her face. So all this dust went into her face and she sneezed. And so we started to work with what we call the entry. It doesn't matter how I work, but that's what we did. What came up was that she was allergic to the way she was nourished, an archetypal form of nourishment, vegetative system. So we said, aha, dust represents, you know, if I go down to the basement of our house, in other words, you go down to your flooring, down to your base, down to your coding, where all your resources are, and you step in down there in the basement, you stir up the dust. Okay, so that's what dust means. If you're allergic to dust, you've stirred up something that actually you're not able to see and you haven't cleaned from yourself. So we go, dust, all right. And then she came up with inappropriate nourishment. So I'm mum's there, and I'm saying, what does she eat? And mum quite rightly said nothing. Hamburgers and pizzas and things that mums don't like their children to eat all the time. And it came out that actually that wasn't it. So I did some more work, and what came up was that her animal self had turned to the left at birth. So as she came out of the birth canal, her body, her animal self, which is of course very unfinite at birth, because you can't walk, you can't crawl, you can't do anything at birth, you can suckle, you're really vegetative at birth. But the animal component of her, which is her neck turning, turned to the left. Something like that. And suddenly her dad said, oh, I think he started to cry. He said, oh my God, I think I know what this is. No. The piece of information that then came up was that she had been nourished by something at birth that she had seen, and it was a human doppelganger, which means basically it's an idea that she's taken on board that's been created by someone's brain. And then her father started to weep, and he said, oh, I think I know what this is. He said, 2 days before her birth, I was in Switzerland. He's actually Austrian. And I was sort of on Lake Zurich, or next to Lake Zurich, and I was looking at the farm, thinking of my childhood. And I knew she was going to be a girl. And I created, and I formed this idea of her growing up, being the most beautiful, long tresses, beautiful dresses, beauty, a princess. Fantasy, complete and utter crap. But he created this, as us people tend to do. We create all sorts of fantasy. But he carried it into the birth room, in his being. And she, coming out of mum, turned and saw the force, or unconsciously, of course, because it's unseen, took it on board, and that had been a form of nourishment. So everyone was going, scratch, scratch. Well, what do you mean by dust and something? I said, it's very easy. So we had a lot of tables in the room, and they were full of people's books and pens and all sorts of stuff. And I said, just imagine this is the arena of your mind. Big table, big arena. He's got a very big arena. Lots of stuff, lots of books, knowledge, etc. on that. And what happens with us is that when an idea comes down with a big force, oomph, what happens? It creates dust. So it was the dust of his mind. How did you win? Okay? Simple. Actually simple. I mean, I know at one level it's not, but it is in fact simple. These things are very simple. So let's go on and talk about the next one. So tubercular, I love you if, I love you but. Syphilinum, I can't change, it's digestive, it goes to your digestive system, your house cleaning, your lymphatic system. So when you get bloated, when you get PMS, ladies, when us chaps get, I don't know what us chaps get, we probably get the equivalent of PMS. Anyway, that is because you haven't cleaned your feelings. You're bogged down in the sensory vegetative mechanism. So the next one is gonorrhea. It sounds really good. Now, I'm a classic gonorrhea. My dad's a classic gonorrhea type. You know, he has fig warts on his back. I've got tiny little skin tags. This classic model would be warts. So gonorrhea is an interesting one. It's got a homeopathic gonorrhea or medorinum. Medorinum. There's an H somewhere. Okay, medorinum. Now, medorinum is the homeopathic model of gonorrhea. Sounds awful, isn't it? Well, gonorrhea is awful. To get gonorrhea, it has to be transmitted. It's sexual transmission. Now, what you have to remember is that gonorrhea and syphilis is really rife now here in America. Okay? I want to change, but I cannot. We're in the land of plenty, but full of nothing, basically. Full of lots of things, but really empty often. Gonorrhea is much more interesting. So this is when your life forces, your servants, we used to erroneously call these the nafsu. This is your servants. God gave us these servants to work on this world. Without these servants, you can't work. You can't be noble human beings. You have to have every single one of these in the right place. Well, gonorrhea is basically saying that these servants operate autonomously. You're segmented. In fact, the model would be, I cannot become integrated. Or upright, or speak the truth, or the British do it very well also. I'm very, Brits are great. This is actually about integrity. This line here represents the first part of the icon of the medical symbol that we in America have on lots of buildings and hospitals and visiting cards and the healing profession. And that single line represents integrity. Well, it's the lack of integrity. Gonorrhea gets in the way of our ability to stand upright. It's quite interesting is that the British do it jolly well. We stand up like this. And actually, we put our integrity up our bottoms, because it's a jolly good place to put it. And you sort of walk around sort of stiff. And sort of talking is jolly hard, because this staff's up our rectum and goes up his throat. So it's jolly difficult to talk properly. Red-faced. Well, obviously, something's up your butt. So we have integrity in the wrong place. It's walk bottom to the wall, boys. So I came from a public school, a boarding school, a private school, where literally, it was called the wall shuffle. Oops. The wall shuffle was just to make sure that the big boys didn't get you. This is to do with the animal force taking over very often and not being guided by the human, nor by the inner feelings, but guided by itself, thinking that actually it's acting with integrity. But it can't be, because it's segmented, separated from truth. So you think that what you're doing is actually a noble act, but you're not. So anything that goes with backs that go out, with joints that go out, with parts of you that appear to work, by themselves, so you're feeling so, oh, I must go, oh yes, I must follow this feeling. That's actually a lack of integrity, because you've not got the staff, the connection inside you to say, no, this is an inappropriate feeling. So it's a lack of integrity, lack of connection to yourself, with God, your ancestors, your inner, yourself. It means that you can't speak the truth, that you can't really stand upright, that your backbone, this is the classic, I must go and see my chiropractor. Put those bones back in place because I lack integrity. Because those bones don't know where to fit themselves. Because they don't have that inside them. They're segmented. So what we do is we get someone else to whack them back and pretend that we're upright. Like us British. And after all, it's the best way and the only way. So this is gonorrhea. Not very nice, but actually, I know this one. I'm very good at this one. This is really where our parts, that are life forces, the natures of yourself, do not talk to each other. Skip series. Positives, yes. I am integrated. Damn it. I am upright. Actually, what it really means is that you become able to distinguish what and when you're out of connection with yourself, and able to bring yourself back to a sense of integrity where you can walk the straight path, where you can talk the straight things, where you can really not waver your integrity to left or right like a jury with strong argument. That you really stand your ground, where you really have a sense of self, a sense of who where you've come from, a sense of belonging. This culture here, we are a classical gonorrhea type. Why? Because we have taken this staff, which is like the flagpole, and we've uprooted it from Europe, and we've taken it over to America because America represents new soil. So we, Americans, have this propensity in our DNA to have uprooted integrity and placed the flagpole, metaphorically, in another soil. So we carry in our DNA not the dynamic of not owning where we come from. Yes. And therefore, you cannot really get in touch with your material nature and your basement and your coding and your DNA, and therefore not only the qualities, but the shadows that you have to surrender to. This is really important. If you understand this, this is what you can take to the right hand. Please, God, help me not to be in this pattern. Allow me to find that uprightness. I see myself here. Please, God, help me to be bigger than this. That's medicine. That's the caduceus. But in this inside me, uprightness, truth, honesty. No questions at the moment. Let me do this and then we'll... On which one? You're jolly right. I love you. You've missed out these guys. Unconditional love. So no matter whether Alicia says no, yes, goodbye, how's your father, I love her. I do. But it's taken me a long time to really be open and really able to not place condition on my love. And that I also see that I'm very difficult. I have great trouble in changing. And I recognize it. And when I am unable to change, I fart like the best of them. My digestive system goes up the or down the, or whatever it is. I get loose in the bowels. Why? Because my being is saying, Salahin, for God's sake, see that you are in a stagnant place. Challenge yourself. Read it. Look at it. See it in your face. Surrender it. Do your right hand to really change. Digest the truth. Don't ferment it. We have this beautiful body that works. Use it. Or lose it. Okay, so this is, I can change. And this is, I can be upright. I can be integrated. I can be congruent. Cancer, or carcinosin, which is the homeopathic model. Cancer is another miasm that we take on board. I was the classic cancer type. At 32, I got prostatic hypertrophy. So my prostate exploded, basically. And I couldn't pee properly at 32. My grandfather died of prostatic cancer. My father's been peeing like a woman for 30 years. He sits on the loo. He doesn't stand because he's locking his prostate. So he sits and he can pee properly. It's an illusion that his prostate's okay. Right? The prostate, in us chaps, is, or should be, or would be, the uterus if we were ladies. So the bulb, the central bulb of your prostate, is the uterus of women. It produces seminal fluid, which is an enveloping fluid, and it envelops our semen. And we envelop our semen and we give this to our women with love. So we envelop, which is the nature of woman. Us men, but very often we just shoot. We just let the semen blow. So the semen isn't truly enclosed with love or the feminine, it's enclosed with, let's get it there. Fire with one shot. So there I was, facing, oh my God, here I am, I've got something going on here. I worked with it, and it was certainly, probably precancer, so I truly don't know, actually. And what I realized was that I was really facing a part of me that was this. And this is primarily the loss of identity. I'll explain that in a moment. And it's the inability also to face life in all its levels. Why is it the loss of identity? Well, the cells in your body contain a nucleus. The nucleus is the identity of the cell. And what happens is the nucleus loses its responsibility. It ceases to work. And so your cells, without the noble control, loses its identity and becomes undifferentiated. It becomes a cell that has no recognizable relationship to its original form. And so when people get cancer, that's what they're actually saying. They're saying, there is a part of me that has no identity, or there is a part of me that has lost its identity, and it happens to be my mammary gland, it happens to be my prostate, it happens to be my cervix, it's my ovaries, it's my liver, it's my whatever. And that's the signal. The target organ is the signal. It then tells you that you have a loss of identity to do with your womanness. You have a loss of identity with your cervix, opening to a male force. It's the gateway to union. Or prostate. I have a loss of identity of being able to truly envelop this woman as a man. To really embrace her and know her. Because all I want to do is to shoot my load. And that's my culture. It's male culture. And so women quite rightly say, let's shut the cervix. Let's shut the door. Let's put a fibroid on there. Let's say I've got a headache. I don't want that in me. He's going to shoot the bolt. And he's got all his stuff in, all his emotion, all his psychic energy, and he unloads it into the wife, in that case, rather than his lover, sweetheart, the wife. No wonder women and men don't want to make love. So we've developed 70% of this culture, men, us men, will develop prostatic problems. prostatic cancer. I have loss of identity, of the ability to truly be supported at a human level within myself, having the feminine part in me. That's the male essence of the prostate. The prostate is the feminine essence of me at a physiological level. The capacity for me to listen. The capacity for me to be inviting. The capacity for me to be embracing. The capacity for me to be safe. The capacity for me to truly be of the earth, to be grounded. And when I don't have that, my prostate might tell me I've got no identity of that, and therefore why should I be here? So it will lose its self, and the prostate will say hi, and it will swell up, and I'll stand at the loo, trying desperately, turning on the water, and then bore holes through it and try and make them thin larger. 70%, your chance, last chance. Listen. Carcinosis. The ability to face who you are, the ability to face your life, the hard things, the good things, the joy, the oh dears, the ahas, facing right there. I copped out all my life. I didn't do anything at school. I robbed, stole, thieved, did huge amounts of narcotics, never did my exams. I was bottom of the class. I had an exam coming up. Guess what? I got ill. Very good science grade. I had every strategy in the book to make sure I never faced who I was. I left school completely unformed, completely undifferentiated, didn't know who I was. I went traveling. I went on an odyssey. I stayed in Afghanistan for 2 years, nearly 2 years. One day, I said, that's finished. And I came back and found out about Seward. Thanks, man. So, that's what I've done. The ability to face my life. And that's why I do this work. To enable me, but also my loved ones, and also other people to face what we need to face, what we've been unable to face. So we don't need to get ill, we don't need to get cancer, but we need sometimes the warning signs to say, notice. Notice. So the jewel is, I face life. The jewel is, I am. I'm not, see, identity can be at every level of consciousness. I think I've been given the time code here.
If you want some time for questions,
yes.
That's what I'm saying.
So let me just put you into the picture of identity. We'll do the five levels just for interest. So material, vegetable, animal, human, noble. So at the material level, you could say, Edward over there would say, well, I'm an Englishman. So that's the identity of your culture. Identity of the material. I'm a Tom. Oh, you're a Mackenzie. Aye? Pretend Scottish. He doesn't even know how to say Scotland properly. Okay, so. Hey, Mackenzie. I am, and that's your heredity. It's okay. So you can have an identity at the material level. This one's very much more difficult, but in fact, the identity that we have here is I'm stuck, I'm vegging out, it's your feeling. So it's an identity based on how you're feeling. So it's your state. I'm sick. Identity here could be what you do. So it's I am a woodcutter, I'm a carpenter. It's sort of, it's not a profession, but it's actually what you do in your life. So it's much more active, it's much more animal. It also is, the negative would be, I'm wounded. So we carry our wounds in the animal nature of who we are. So our animals limp to life. When we're wounded, when we're penetrated, the animal part is where our wounds are kept. But we get stuck in a state. And if that state is huge, we're stuck also in the material, because very often the wound comes from our material. Up here, this would be I am, And it would be, I am a doctor, I am a first-class twit, it's some sort of human occupation that you would label yourself. I am a physician, I am a psychiatrist, I am a computer operator, I am whatever. And of course, this one would be, when you introduce yourselves with your first name, your Christian name, or your given name, or your Suvid name, in a way you're saying, I am something. But if I come along and say I'm a physician, I'm introducing myself at the human level. If I come along and say, shit, as I was the other day when I got again beaten by someone's words, the wound in me just got tickled again. And I was roaring, really roaring. And if I came and sat on the coffee, cigarette, then I'm in a state. And I sit there vegetative, in the vegetable nature of myself, unable to live. And if I'm a stucco prig, and I'm into my, well, damn it, I mean, after all, I'm British, then I would be in my material nature, the force of that. All right. So this is potluck. This is, I could talk for hours and hours and hours on this stuff. This is really about you and I beginning to recognize that Bappa gave us not his own model. This is a model that's actually thousands of years old. This is not a Subud model. Please get this right. This is Islamic, it's Judaic, it's pre-Christian. People have always understood the forces. Bappa gave us this extraordinary, the latter hand, to understand these forces. The first hand, that's what's brilliant about it. So if we can understand that all of these have a force, a power, which is an animal component of anything. And when it takes power, we then operate from it. And our bodies are our video screen. It displays information. And as you start to really listen to everything that happens in your body, then you can have the precursor, the warning of what myth you're in, what story you're in, what journey you're in that has actually kept you paddling for the last 20 years and that you've gone nowhere. That's the gift of your bodies and the gift of the myth of disease. Thank you very much.